They love to call themselves global powers, strong, self-reliant, totally independent. But here's the twist, in 2025, their survival hinges on one crucial lifeline: Asia. Think about it: energy, electronics, food, labor, even financial capital, it's all flowing from the East. And without it, these 10 countries would be in serious trouble. We're talking stalled economies, broken supply chains, and a future that suddenly looks a lot less certain. So let's dive into the 10 nations that absolutely cannot function without Asia. And trust me, once you see just how deep this dependence runs, it'll completely change the way you view global power. Number 1, Australia. You might think of Australia as distant, rugged, self-sufficient, almost cut off from the chaos of the world. But here's the truth: in 2025, Australia is one of the most Asia-dependent economies on the planet. And if Asia pulls away, Australia doesn't just stumble, it crashes. Why? Because nearly everything Australia produces, iron ore, coal, natural gas, beef, you name it, is shipped straight to Asia. Just China alone buys over a third of Australia's total exports. Add Japan, South Korea, India, and Southeast Asia to the mix, and we're talking over 70% of its entire export market. That's not just trade, that's a lifeline. But it's not just about minerals and meat. Let's talk education. Australia's top universities, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, they're filled with international students from China, India, and Southeast Asia. And those students? Their tuition fees fund entire departments, research programs, even campus buildings. If they stop coming, some universities would quite literally go bankrupt. Tourism tells the same story. Asian travelers, especially from China and Japan, fuel a massive part of Australia's tourism industry. Remove them, and coastal towns, national parks, and even major airlines start bleeding money. And labor? Australia's healthcare, construction, and agriculture sectors rely heavily on skilled and semi-skilled migrants from Asia. Without them, entire systems would slow down, or shut down. Even on the geopolitical front, Australia's walking a tightrope. Sure, the US is its longtime ally. But its economy? That belongs to Asia. One wrong move with China, just one, can trigger trade bans, tariffs, blacklists. The fallout is instant. And the reality is, Australia simply can't afford that risk. Number 3, France. France loves to present itself as proud, independent, a symbol of elegance and global influence. But in 2025, its economic heartbeat is pulsing straight through Asia. Trade, energy, tourism, you name it, France is more tightly bound to the East than ever. And without Asia, things start to shrink. Economically, culturally, even diplomatically. Let's talk trade first. France is known for its luxury: Louis Vuitton, Chanel, L'Oréal, the height of fashion, cosmetics, wine, and tech. But who's buying all of it? Asia. Chinese, Japanese, and South Korean consumers are driving those sales. Without them, those elegant boxes just collect dust in Parisian showrooms. And it's not a one-way street. France imports a lot from Asia: electronics from South Korea, textiles from Bangladesh, industrial machinery, and parts from China. These imports keep French factories running and store shelves stocked. If that flow stops, industries stall, production slows, and French companies get priced out of the global market. Now let's talk energy. France may champion clean energy, but it still relies heavily on oil and gas from the Middle East, places like Qatar and the UAE. Those imports are vital. Without them, energy costs soar, and economic stability starts to wobble. And there's more: education and culture. Thousands of students from China, India, and Vietnam attend French universities. Their tuition keeps departments alive, their ideas fuel research, and their presence enriches academic life. Without them, the ripple effects are immediate. And tourism? That romantic image of Paris, the Riviera, luxury boutiques, it's powered in part by wealthy Asian travelers. Chinese tourists, especially, spend big on luxury shopping, fine dining, and cultural attractions. If they stop coming, the loss is hit hard. Hotels, shops, even entire towns feel the pinch. France might stand tall on the global stage, but behind the scenes, Asia is holding more of the strings than anyone likes to admit. Number 4, Germany. Germany, Europe's industrial powerhouse. Precision engineering, world-class exports, legendary brands like BMW, Mercedes, Siemens. It's the engine that keeps much of Europe running. But here's the part most people don't talk about: in 2025, that engine doesn't move without Asia. Start with China, Germany's biggest trade partner. Not just important, critical. German carmakers depend on Chinese consumers for almost half of their global sales. That sleek Mercedes or high-end BMW? There's a good chance it was built with a Chinese buyer in mind. Remove that demand, and Germany's export-heavy economy stumbles, fast. But it goes even deeper. German factories, especially in cities like Stuttgart or Wolfsburg, rely on Asian-made components. Microchips from Taiwan and South Korea, rare earth elements from China, mass-produced parts from Vietnam and Thailand. These aren't luxuries. They're necessities. Even a small delay in chip shipments can shut down entire production lines. And then there's Germany's ambitious push toward clean energy and electric vehicles. It wants to lead the way, but here's the kicker: the batteries, solar panels, and key components almost all come from Asia. In fact, China controls more than 80% of the global supply chain for lithium-ion batteries. Take that away, and Germany's green dreams start looking like empty promises. Asia also fuels demand for Germany's heavy-duty industrial equipment, the machinery that powers factories across Europe and beyond. Lose those clients? You lose the backbone of Germany's economy. So while Germany may look like a symbol of independence and engineering excellence, the truth is clear: without Asia, the engine that drives it simply doesn't run. Number 5, Canada. Canada has a global image: resource-rich, self-sufficient, quietly powerful. But in 2025, the truth is, Canada's survival is more tightly tied to Asia than most people even realize. From exports to immigration, from classrooms to construction sites, Canada leans heavily on the East. Let's start with trade. Canada exports massive amounts of natural resources: lumber, oil, liquefied natural gas, wheat, seafood, and minerals. So who's buying all that? Asia. Countries like China, Japan, South Korea, and India are among Canada's biggest customers. Without that demand, ports from Vancouver to Halifax would fall eerily quiet, and resource-driven provinces like Alberta and British Columbia would start bleeding jobs. Now zoom in on immigration, the backbone of Canada's population growth and workforce. The majority of new immigrants and temporary foreign workers come straight from Asia. Nurses from the Philippines, engineers from India, tech professionals from China. They're filling critical labor shortages in healthcare, agriculture, construction, and the tech sector. Without them, entire industries would slow to a crawl, or collapse altogether. Then there's education. Canadian universities thrive on full-paying international students. And guess where most of them come from? You guessed it, China, India, and Vietnam. Their tuition funds everything from faculty salaries to campus development. Take those students away, and many schools would face a serious funding crisis. And we can't ignore the investment pipeline. Asian capital is flowing into Canadian real estate, startups, and infrastructure. Investors from China and South Korea are helping shape housing markets, fund transportation projects, and back business hubs, especially in global cities like Toronto and Vancouver. So yes, Canada may look independent on the surface. But underneath, there's a deep, essential reliance on Asia. Without it, the Canadian system begins to wobble. And the effects would be felt coast to coast. Number 6, the United Kingdom. There's a twist of irony here. The UK once ruled vast parts of Asia. Fast forward to 2025, and now it depends on Asia just to stay afloat. Post-Brexit, post-pandemic, and post-political stability, the UK has quietly but urgently turned eastward. Economically, strategically, even culturally, it's Asia that's keeping Britain in the game. Let's begin with trade. After cutting ties with the European Union, the UK needed new markets, and fast. So it looked to Asia. Trade deals were inked with India, Singapore, Vietnam, and it even joined the CPTPP, a major Pacific trade pact. These markets aren't just helpful, they're vital. Without them, British exports, from Scotch whisky to financial services, would tank. But it's not just exports. Imports from Asia are everywhere. Electronics, clothing, machinery, raw materials, they flood into British markets. Step into a supermarket, a pharmacy, or even a tech store, you'll see it. Asia is woven into the fabric of everyday British life. And if that supply chain snaps, prices spike immediately. Now zoom in on education. UK universities are packed with international students from China, India, Malaysia, and beyond. And here's the truth, their tuition fees aren't just extra income, they're the lifeline. Take those students away, and the financial foundations of Britain's most prestigious schools begin to crack. Even the iconic city of London, once the crown jewel of global finance, is increasingly reliant on Asian capital. From startups to sovereign wealth funds, Asian investors are keeping the momentum alive. And when it comes to real estate, buyers from Hong Kong, Singapore, and the Gulf are pumping money into London property. That cash flow, it's keeping the market breathing. In 2025, Britain might still talk about sovereignty and independence, but behind the scenes, Asia has become the silent partner holding the system together. Number 7, Brazil. It may be on the other side of the globe, but in 2025, Brazil's economic heartbeat, it echoes in Asia. As Latin America's largest economy, Brazil is rich in resources, soybeans, sugar, iron ore, and more. But here's the catch, Asia is the biggest buyer. And without that demand, the Brazilian economy starts to wobble, badly. Let's start with agriculture. China alone imports more than half of Brazil's soybeans. Why? Because those soybeans feed China's livestock industry and are central to its food security. If China ever pulls back, Brazil's massive farming sector, millions of workers, would feel the hit almost instantly. And it's not just the fields, it's the mines, too. Brazil exports massive quantities of iron ore, especially to, you guessed it, China. That ore becomes the steel used in construction, tech, and manufacturing. Shut that pipeline down, and Brazil's mining giants, and the communities built around them, face serious collapse. But the dependence goes even deeper. Asian companies are heavily invested in Brazil's infrastructure and energy. Chinese firms have stakes in power grids, port operations, even railway construction. South Korean and Japanese companies are deeply embedded in Brazil's automobile and manufacturing sectors. This isn't just about foreign capital, it's about operational dependence. Asia isn't sitting on the sidelines, it's actively involved in Brazil's economic engine. And Brazil's leaders know this. That's why you'll see them constantly pivoting toward Asia, joining BRICS summits, striking bilateral deals, and welcoming investment from Beijing to New Delhi. These aren't just photo ops, they're survival strategies. For Brazil in 2025, Asia isn't just a partner. It's a lifeline. Number 8, Saudi Arabia. Yes, Saudi Arabia is rich in oil, but here's the reality in 2025, that oil only matters because Asia is still buying it. Behind the shining palaces, the megaprojects, the futuristic city plans, there's a simple, hard truth: without Asia's demand and partnerships, the Saudi economy hits a wall. Start with exports. Over 70% of Saudi oil is shipped straight to Asia. China, India, Japan, South Korea, they're the top buyers. These nations power their industries, their transport, and their economies with Saudi crude. If they stop buying, Saudi Arabia loses its primary source of income, just like that. But oil isn't the whole story. Saudi Arabia is in the middle of a bold economic transformation, Vision 2030. It's about diversifying the economy, building futuristic cities, and becoming a global hub beyond oil. But who's making that happen? Asia. Chinese infrastructure giants, Japanese tech firms, South Korean construction companies. They're not just involved, they're essential. They're laying the foundations for the kingdom's gigaprojects like NEOM and beyond. Without them, the vision stays a blueprint. Then there's labor, the quiet force behind the growth. Unskilled laborers from the Philippines, Bangladesh, and Indonesia fill key roles in construction and services. Meanwhile, skilled professionals, engineers, IT experts, consultants, from India and Pakistan drive the tech and development sectors. Pull that workforce away, and Saudi cities simply stop working. Even tourism, one of the kingdom's new pillars for post-oil diversification, is Asia-focused. Saudi Arabia is actively courting affluent travelers from China and the Gulf, hoping to turn cultural tourism into a major revenue stream. And culturally, Saudi Arabia is subtly shifting. Its urban ambitions and social reforms increasingly echo Asia's model: think high-tech, futuristic cities balanced with conservative values. In short, for all of its oil wealth and bold plans, Saudi Arabia in 2025 is deeply tied to Asia. Take away that connection, and the vision dims fast. Number 9, Russia. Russia likes to project strength, standing tall, defiant, and self-reliant. But in 2025, the truth is hard to ignore: without Asia, Russia's economy, and its global influence, starts to crumble. Isolated from the West by sanctions and war, Russia has turned east. And now, it doesn't really have a choice. Let's begin with energy. After Europe cut ties and stopped buying Russian oil and gas, Asia became Russia's only real customer. China now buys more Russian crude than any other nation. India. It's dramatically increased its imports, taking advantage of heavily discounted fuel. Pipelines have been rerouted. New long-term deals signed. But make no mistake, without these buyers, Russia's state budget collapses. And it's not just oil. Trade, once flowing westward, now leans hard into Asia. Russia exports timber, metals, fertilizers, grain, and more. And who's absorbing it all? China, Vietnam, Central Asian nations, they've become Russia's lifeline. At the same time, Russia imports critical goods from Asia, everything from consumer electronics to industrial equipment. Without those, factories grind to a halt. Then there's technology. With Western tech companies gone, Russia fills the void with Chinese smartphones, Indian software, South Korean components. Even its military hardware is increasingly dependent on Asian parts or support. And on the political front, Russia leans heavily on its partnerships with China, Iran, and India to counterbalance its isolation from the West. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the BRICS alliance, these are no longer symbolic clubs. They are lifelines, for trade, diplomacy, and survival. And every single one of them is Asia-driven. So, while Russia may still claim it stands alone, the truth is, without Asia, it doesn't stand at all. Number 10, South Africa. South Africa may call itself the economic giant of Africa, but in 2025, its engine runs on something many don't talk about enough: Asia's support. From infrastructure to trade, energy to investment, South Africa's growth is deeply tied to its partnerships in the East. Take infrastructure, for example. Roads, ports, power plants, many of them exist because of Chinese investments over the past decade. These aren't just projects, they're the lifelines of South Africa's economy. Without that ongoing funding and technical support from Asia, these systems risk breaking down. And let's talk trade. China is South Africa's biggest trading partner. South Africa ships out gold, platinum, coal, and iron ore, all headed straight to Asian factories. In return, it brings in the electronics, machinery, and tech it needs to keep running. If that flow stops, the economy slows, fast. Energy. That's another critical point. South Africa's power grid has been in crisis for years. Blackouts are common. But now, partnerships with India, China, and the UAE are helping to rebuild and stabilize the country's energy system. Without that help, it's lights out, literally. And it doesn't stop there. In cities like Cape Town and Johannesburg, you'll find Asian tourists, students, and businesses everywhere, filling the gaps in a shaky local investment scene. From corner stores to real estate developments, Asian capital is quietly keeping things afloat.